Hello, and welcome to another spine-chilling episode of True Horror Stories. Tonight, we delve into a particularly disturbing tale that comes from the depths of Reddit's LetsNotMeet forum. As usual, we don't claim to verify the authenticity of this story, but the detailed account and subsequent police report give it considerable credibility. So dim your lights, get comfortable, and prepare to hear about one camper's terrifying experience in the secluded woods of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. Our story begins with Jordan, an experienced 28-year-old backpacker who had been planning a solitary weekend camping trip to decompress from his high-stress job in Seattle. Jordan had been camping alone since his college days and was well prepared with all the necessary gear and safety precautions. He chose a somewhat remote trail that wasn't particularly popular, but was still marked on maps and had an occasional ranger patrol. After parking his car at the trailhead on Friday afternoon, he set off on the 5-mile hike to his intended camping spot, a small clearing near a stream that he had discovered during a previous expedition. The hike was peaceful and uneventful, with the dense forest canopy filtering the late afternoon sunlight into a gentle green glow. Jordan felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease as he breathed in the crisp mountain air and listened to the soothing sounds of birds and rustling leaves. He reached his destination just before sunset and efficiently set up his tent, organized his supplies, and prepared a simple dinner over a small camping stove. As darkness fell, he sat by his modest campfire, enjoying the stars becoming visible through gaps in the trees and feeling completely at peace in his solitude. He had no cell service here, which was precisely what he wanted: a complete disconnection from the digital world and its constant demands. Jordan woke early the next morning, refreshed and eager to explore the surrounding area. After a quick breakfast of instant oatmeal and coffee, he packed a day bag with water, trail mix, and navigation tools. The weather was perfect for hiking, with clear skies and mild temperatures. He planned to follow the stream uphill for a few miles to a small waterfall he had read about in a hiking forum. Setting off with high spirits, he carefully marked his path with small piles of stones at irregular intervals, a habit he had developed over years of solo hiking to ensure he could find his way back if needed. As the morning progressed, Jordan noticed something odd. The forest seemed unusually quiet. The birds that had been singing cheerfully earlier had fallen silent, and even the typical rustling of small animals in the underbrush was absent. At first, he dismissed this as a normal fluctuation in wildlife activity, but as the silence persisted, a slight feeling of unease began to creep into his mind. He paused to take a drink of the water and scan his surroundings, seeing nothing out of the ordinary except for the eerie stillness. Deciding he was being paranoid, he continued his hike, though now with a heightened awareness of every sound, including his own footsteps on the forest floor. Around midday, Jordan reached the waterfall, a beautiful cascade of water flowing over moss-covered rocks into a clear pool below. The sight momentarily dispelled his uneasiness, and he sat on a boulder to eat his lunch and take some photos. While sitting there, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The waterfall should have been teeming with wildlife coming to drink, yet there was no sign of any animals. Additionally, he thought he caught glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, but whenever he turned to look directly, there was nothing there. Jordan tried to rationalize these feelings, attributing them to his isolation and the natural wariness that comes from being alone in the wilderness. After spending about an hour at the waterfall, Jordan decided to head back to his campsite. On the return journey, he noticed something that sent a chill down his spine. One of his marker stone piles had been deliberately scattered. He was certain it had been intact when he passed it earlier, and there were no animals in the area large enough to disrupt it so completely. Looking around cautiously, he saw no signs of other hikers. The unsettling conclusion was that someone had been following him and had deliberately tampered with his trail marker. Jordan quickened his pace, trying to maintain his composure while being extra vigilant of his surroundings. When Jordan finally reached his campsite in the late afternoon, his heart sank as he discovered that someone had been there during his absence. Nothing was missing or damaged, but things had been subtly moved. His tent zipper was open when he distinctly remembered closing it. His cooking utensils, which he had neatly packed away, were laid out on a flat rock. Most disturbing of all, he found unfamiliar boot prints in the soft earth around his tent that definitely weren't his own. They appeared to be from a larger boot and showed signs of someone who had been walking in circles around his sleeping area. His isolated haven now felt like a vulnerable target, and the peaceful solitude he had sought was transformed into a threatening isolation. With daylight fading and at least a 5-mile hike back to his car, Jordan made the difficult decision to stay the night rather than risk traversing unfamiliar trails in darkness. He secured his campsite as best he could, making sure all his equipment was inside the tent with him. Despite his exhaustion from the day's hiking, sleep evaded him as he lay alert, listening to every sound in the forest. The normal nighttime noises, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, the gentle babble of the stream, all seemed sinister. Now, several times during the night, he thought he heard footsteps circling his tent, but when he shone his flashlight outside, he saw nothing but shadows dancing among the trees. The breaking of dawn brought little relief to Jordan's frayed nerves. As sunlight filtered through the forest canopy, he emerged from his tent to find more evidence that someone had been near his campsite during the night. Fresh boot prints were visible in patches of mud, and more alarmingly, he discovered a small pile of objects placed on a stump about 20 yards from his tent. Upon closer inspection, Jordan recoiled in horror. The pile contained items he had discarded the previous day: an empty energy bar wrapper, an apple core, and a used tea bag. Items that would have been in his trash bag, which he had carefully hung from a tree branch to avoid attracting wildlife. Someone had gone through his garbage and arranged these items in what appeared to be a deliberate display. Thoroughly unnerved, Jordan decided to abandon the remainder of his trip and return to civilization immediately. He packed up his camping gear with record speed, constantly scanning the surrounding forest for any sign of movement. As he shouldered his backpack and prepared to set off down the trail, a loud crack of a breaking branch echoed from deeper in the woods. Jordan froze, straining his eyes to peer through the dense foliage. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a figure standing motionless between two distant trees, tall, dressed in dark clothing, and simply watching him. When he blinked and looked again, the figure was gone, leaving him to question whether his fear was causing him to hallucinate. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jordan set off down the trail at a pace that bordered on running. The 5-mile hike back to the trailhead became a desperate race against his own mounting terror. Every sound in the forest seemed amplified. The wind through the trees sounded like whispered voices, and the occasional breaking twig convinced him he was being pursued. About halfway back to his car, Jordan made a shocking discovery that confirmed his worst fears. In a small clearing just off the main trail, he found what appeared to be a recently abandoned campsite. Unlike his own minimal impact setup, this camp showed signs of someone who had been staying there for some time. A fire pit with charred remains, a crude shelter made of tarps and branches, and most disturbingly, a tree where various photographs were pinned. Approaching cautiously, Jordan's blood ran cold as he realized the photos were of hikers on the trail, including several shots of himself from the previous day. The photographer had clearly been tracking his movements from a distance, capturing images of him setting up camp, hiking, and even sleeping through the thin material of his tent. Among these photos were images of other hikers as well, some appearing to date back several weeks based on changing seasonal indicators in the backgrounds. Jordan didn't linger to examine them all, his self-preservation instinct screaming at him to get away from this place as quickly as possible. The final stretch of trail seemed endless as Jordan pushed himself to maintain a rapid pace despite his growing fatigue. The weight of his backpack dug into his shoulders, and his lungs burned with exertion. But fear propelled him forward. He couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching him from the dense undergrowth on either side of the path. Occasional sounds from behind suggested he was being followed, though whenever he turned to look, the trail appeared empty. When he finally emerged from the forest into the trailhead parking area, the sight of his car and another couple preparing for their own hike brought an overwhelming sense of relief. With shaking hands, he unlocked his vehicle and threw his backpack inside. Before driving away, Jordan approached the couple and warned them about his unsettling experience. Initially skeptical, they became concerned when he showed them a photo he had taken of the stalker's campsite and the disturbing collection of surveillance images. Together, they used the couple's satellite phone to contact the park rangers, who promised to investigate immediately. As Jordan finally drove away from the trailhead, his rearview mirror revealed a forest that now seemed menacing rather than peaceful. What had begun as a rejuvenating weekend in nature had transformed into a nightmarish encounter with an unknown watcher in the woods, a stark reminder that sometimes the most frightening monsters are not supernatural beings, but humans whose motives remain hidden in the shadows. The investigation that followed Jordan's report revealed an even more disturbing truth. Park rangers and local police discovered the makeshift campsite exactly where Jordan had described it. The collection of photographs was extensive, documenting not just Jordan, but dozens of hikers who had used the trail over the previous months. Further exploration of the area uncovered a sophisticated network of trails that circumvented the main path, allowing someone to move quickly and quietly through terrain most hikers would find impassable. Most chilling of all was the discovery of personal items that had been reported missing by various hikers over the past year. Water bottles, pocket knives, articles of clothing, and even a journal belonging to a backpacker who had come through the area in early spring. Tags: camping horror story, true camping story, creepy forest encounter, survival horror story, camping alone, wilderness horror, backpacking dangers, forest stalker story, true Reddit horror, camping nightmare, Pacific Northwest, camping, camping safety, solo camping gone wrong, woods lurker, nature horror, outdoor survival, campsite terror, hiking horror story, forest danger, unexplained wilderness events.